on the last video where we looked at outcomes and finding measurable indicators based on specifying the population target a threshold as well as the means of verification, what we learn in this video is to really look at each indicator and ascertain if the indicator is smart in order to ensure that the outcomes are measured in a tangible and a usable format. So let's look at the idea of smart indicators. A smart indicator is, number one, should be specific. Now, if we are looking at improved classroom teaching or improved teaching in classrooms, now how do we measure that? Now, the first way we could be specific is the number of teaching learning methods used, where we are being very specific to measure that. Number two is measurable. So you're actually going in to say the number of teaching learning methods used in the classroom. You can measure that over time. It should be achievable. So when you say, an inclusive space in classrooms with good teaching learning materials, it's not only difficult to measure, but it's also, it differs, and it's probably not easy to say whether it's achievable or not. They should be relevant. So when you're saying improved teaching methods or improved classroom instruction, measuring if they're teaching, so they're using certain methodologies. If you're looking at technology, you would also have to see whether they have, are you measuring the relevant indicators? Is it just about using technology or about some of the tool books you've given? So your indicators need to be relevant. And this is in line with the time component of an indicator. When are you going to measure these indicators? Are they time bound? So if you start getting into indicator identification, I think a few things or best practices you should keep in mind are, number one, make it easy. Easy where it can be understood across the board, across different stakeholders, and it's easy to calculate. Number two, if you're talking about classroom methods and the use of different teaching learning methods in classrooms, have a combination of both qualitative as well as quantitative indicators. So one is what kind of tools are teachers using, but the other could also be feedback or just basic stakeholder views on these methods or how easy it is to use them, etc. Cost effective. Now try and ensure that your indicators are not very expensive to collect data. So if most of your indicators are observation based and you regularly need to visit the field or regularly need to have stakeholder discussions, it might become quite an expensive proposition. So ensure your indicators are cost effective and not very resource intensive. We spoke about the relevance, but assess and recognize the context within which. So if you start saying, okay, better teaching methods, and you say all classrooms should be, or the indicator is every classroom is, or the number of classrooms where only computers are used, right? It's a little difficult in the context of rural India. So recognize context while, defining your indicators. I think also important is less is more. You don't need to collect 50 indicators. As long as you have one or two indicators kind of understanding your outcomes or tracking your outcomes, I think that's more than enough. So identify core indicators which will provide essential metrics for you to kind of get a vision or get an understanding of the impact. In any indicator development process, I think it's very important to do literature reviews and see what similar organizations or programs use as indicators, but also to get in experts. So if you're working on a healthcare project, do get in a healthcare expert to see if this makes sense, or to see if it's actually smart. Or if you're working in an education project, or someone to look at the indicators you developed and help you to understand how to measure them, and if they're smart. Consider resources. So like I mentioned before, if you have only observation tools where you have to regularly visit these areas, but you don't have the appropriate human resources, people who are trained to make these observations, or budgets for so much field work or field travel, then it will get difficult. So ensure that you also consider the resources available for you to while determining indicators. And I think this again relates to less is more, but ensure that all your indicators are matched to a certain outcome or a certain or your goal or your outputs. Because what happens is sometimes we collect so much data or we have so many indicators that it's really difficult for us to use them appropriately, and we end up spending too much time and resources collecting data that we might not use. So that's it for this exercise. I would still urge all of you to look at the indicator template. So to start off with, some sort of a backwards mapping process and a theory of change for your organization. And based on the outcomes, take each outcome and try and fill in the indicator template that's been provided in the module folder. Thank you so much.